Hello, good evening, and welcome to the third and last instalment of our three-part series of The Colour of Wine. My name is Mandy, and I'm the Bayman Hospitality Wine Ambassador and your host for this evening. I run a wine blogging platform called Come Wine With Me. My experience in the hospitality industry led me to working really closely with some wine suppliers, and I found the world of wine to be really fascinating. I'm currently working towards my WSET qualifications. This is the third and final part in the three-part series of The Colour of Wine. If you missed the other two episodes, you can catch up with them on YouTube. The series is in partnership with the Wine and Spirits Education Trust and Nightingale, and I want to thank them for their partnership so far. We have an array of great panelists, as we've had the last 2 weeks today, and I'm really looking forward to getting stuck in and chatting with them. Just in terms of formatting, the first half hour will be having a discussion with our panel. We'll then move on to a wine pairing, followed by questions. Feel free to use the chat box to send in the questions, which we'll post to the panel at the end. Now, we have one panel member missing because she's having technical issues, but hopefully she'll be joining shortly. But Mags, I'm going to get you to introduce yourself.
Okay, sure. My name is Mags. I've been working in the wine industry for about 13 years so far. I've not had any job outside wine, so I don't know what the world without wine looks like. I've occupied several roles from working in wine shops all the way up to wine production. So that's me. I currently run a wine importer, independently own a wine importing agency, and I'm importing wines from around the world. So that's me.
Amazing. Shane, I'm going to get you to introduce yourself.
Yes, of course. Good evening, Mandy. Good evening, everyone. My name is Shane Jones, and I'm based here in London, and I'm a wine and sake educator, and I hold the WSET Level 4, so that's the diploma qualification in wines and spirits. And I'm principally a wine educator teaching here in London at West London Wine School, the WSET School at London Bridge, and also in Germany and in France.
Awesome. For Kayo, are you on mute? You're on mute.
You're on mute. You're on
Kayo,
mute.
you're on mute. Oh, you're on mute again.
Hi, everyone.
Technical issues. Kayo, sorry about the name pronunciation, but do you want to introduce yourself?
It's all right. No worries. I'm Fakayo, and I am a sommelier. I work in the fine dining industry. I work at 67 Pall Mall, which is a private members club at the moment. And I've been in the industry about 2.5 years, so not that long, but been super keen on wine for ages. I'm currently working towards my certified course of master sommelier qualifications, if they don't cancel the exam again, fingers crossed. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Nice. And just in time, our last panelist has joined Louis. Louis, do you want to introduce yourself?
Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah,
all good.
Great. So I'm Louis. I work as a communications consultant for wineries. I've only been in the industry for about a year now, and aside from that, I also run a blog and I do private wine tasting.
Awesome, amazing. Well, it's lovely to meet you all. And as mentioned before, I'm going to start on the questions. So, Shane, I'm going to put the first one to you. How did you get into the wine industry?
Right. So, wine is perhaps my third career, having started off as an economist and then much later having been involved in property investment. And neither of them had much joy for me, but I was always a very keen wine enthusiast, and I'm also a keen cook. So of course there's a marriage between the two. I joined the industry in 2012, starting off as a wine advisor in a wine shop, and that ran its course, which later led me to pursue a career in events and then finally into wine education, which is what I focus on today. And in addition to wine education, of course, as I mentioned in my introduction, I'm also a sake educator. So it has been a rather interesting journey, and it's dynamic, it's changing all the time, and I'm looking forward to the next chapter.
Amazing. Sounds like you've done a lot so far for someone who looks so young.
Don't ask me my age.
How did you get into the wine industry?
So it all kind of started with my mum. So we are not a wine drinking family. We're more of a rum drinking family. But my mum was always known for the person who always had a glass of wine. That was like her thing at family parties. She always had a glass of red wine. So me and my brother and our partners actually showed the tiniest interest in wine, and she kind of pounced on it and bought us a WSET 2 course for Christmas because she wanted her own little sommeliers. So after doing that, the rest is kind of history. We just all fell in love with wine, and it was lovely because now that's something we can all bond over. And I just decided at that point to quit my job and to move into the wine industry. So it was all mum's fault, essentially.
Nice. That's a lovely story. Fikayo, oh my God, I'm struggling. Sorry. Fikayo.
Like
I said this to myself
you know,
5 times.
Fikayo.
And yeah. How did you get into the wine industry, and how did you end up at 67 Pall Mall?
So it's kind of a long story, but I'm going to try and keep it as short as possible. Right. So I actually studied pharmacy up to master's level, and I was practicing in London and in Sheffield when I met someone who was a keen on wine and kind of introduced me in that way. And we went to the first Michelin star restaurant. And I saw someone in a suit with a cute little pin with grapes on there. And they were talking about wine, and they were talking about the soil and the climate and, you know, the generations of winemakers. I was, oh my God, first of all, you get paid to do this? How cool is that? And then I thought, that's pretty interesting. So because I knew that I had a lot of passion, pharmacy was something I was, but I wasn't really passionate about. It was, I thought I would do WST level 2. I did. I studied for it like just nights, you know, I studied for it like I was studying for surgeon, some kind of super exam. And I did really well. So I was proud of myself. And I thought, what's going to be the next step? You need to find something that's going to say, okay, 100%, let's go for it. So I booked a flight. I went on the Eurostar, actually, via Paris, went to Burgundy by myself, spent about a week there just sniffing around, seeing what was going on. And I stumbled upon the Hospice de Beaune. Basically, it was established in 1443 by Nicholas Rollin, who was the chancellor to the Duke of Burgundy, and he built it to care for wounded soldiers from the 100-Year War between England and France. And there were people who owned vineyards who felt that what he was doing was a very good cause, and so they donated their vineyards to him. And auctions were being held for the Hospice de Beaune, and are still being held till now every November to sell off these and people buy them. Whatever money they get from them is put back into looking. I don't know if you can hear me properly. Whatever money they get is put to charitable use. So whether it's looking after the patients or kind of things. And when I was there, it was such an emotional moment for me, because it was kind of like pharmacy is meeting wine, and they're working hand in hand to do something really beautiful. So at that point, I was like, this is like a sign from God. Like, I need to be doing this. This is a perfect transition for me. And so this is how I stumbled to the wine, into the world of wine properly, and came back to England, started applying for jobs from Sheffield, where I was living, and got a job in London. And a year later, so moved to 67 Pall Mall, and been happy and living ever since.
Nice. What a story. What a journey. Mag, same question to you.
Yeah.
Yes, it's kind of hard to follow that, isn't it? You know,
Yeah, sorry.
from God in the Hospice de Beaune.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I studied maths and sciences in high school, So I approach wine from a very kind of scientific and technical background. Not that I went to university and did it, but I've always been quite strong in science. However, I knew from a very young age that I didn't want to go into higher education. That's a story for another time. I wanted to go and work. Okay, so at this point, I'm kind of 16 of 17, 18 years old, and I was working for Waitrose, and they said, listen, you do quite well for us. Why don't you go do a WST level 2 and become a wine specialist? I'm like, I drink cider. I have no idea what this stuff is. I was an avid heavy cider drinker at that point. Anything that was dry. Anyway, so I go and do my level 2, and I just find out, it's essentially just, a bit of chemistry, a bit of biology, and some geography. I'm like, yeah, I was quite good at those in school. I did quite well, and I did the level 3, did quite well in that as well. Did the spirits, did well. And I thought, okay, right, what's the next step? The diploma came a calling. I thought, right, I'll throw myself at this thing and see what comes out the other end. So I did the diploma, and at the same time doing some sales jobs in the background. So I mean, the wine industry was something which I more kind of fell into, rather than I got up one day and said, yes, wine is the thing I'm going to do. It just so happens that the subjects which I was quite good at school just so happen to be the things that you need for understanding what wine is. And then after that, I applied to do the Master of Wine, which I'm still trudging my way through. It is well and truly, picking my backside, but we'll get there eventually. That's me.
Awesome. So you've all come from such different backgrounds. It's amazing. I love it to have us all here. So I'm going to put this to Louis first, only because your career has been the shortest in the wine industry. But what has been a career highlight for you?
I think the thing I remember most is when I did a tasting for 50 very loud people who really went into wine. It was a fundraiser, and so they were there for the cause, but they were really set in their ways of what they wanted to drink and how they wanted to drink it. But towards the end, they were kind of all filling out their notebooks and asking, where did you get this wine? So for me, that's been a highlight, because I really want to make wine accessible and relatable. I never grew up drinking wine or from a family of winemakers or anything like that. So for me, people being able to go into a store and spend £15 and actually know that they're spending their hard-earned money on a good bottle of wine, and being able to look at the label and say, I have a rough idea where that's coming from, is really key to me. So after that event, everyone was saying, I know what a hot climate wine might taste like versus a cool climate. And for me, that's like music to my ears. So that was my highlight, getting 50 slightly grumpy people to admit that, there is something behind wine tasting.
Yeah, sure. Oh, that sounds like a great event. Mags, any career highlights, or many career highlights that you can discuss?
Oh, goodness gracious. Yes, I have one, which is probably like a year, maybe 2 years ago. So as I've mentioned, I kind of followed the wine education route. And most of what in the WSET is theoretical, right? You read it from a book, and you're taught wine from a book, from a textbook, and you might occasionally go down and do a vintage if you're so lucky. And so first year of doing the MW, just after my exams, but before the results, a friend rings me and say, hey, Mags, you could make wine, right? And I've done 1 or 2 vintages. I'm like, yeah, of course I can make wine. Anyway, so in my head, I'm thinking I'm going down to help a winemaker to make wine. Anyway, I turned up to this vineyard in the south of France, and these chaps had planted a vineyard 4 years ago. They're like, right, we've got a ton of grape coming off the vineyard. Tell us what equipment we need, and tell us what we need from scratch. So essentially, I found myself going over to help someone make wine, and actually coming back from France, having made and bottled a private label wine. Everything went fine, by the way. Small issue of a broken filter, but that's neither here nor there. We ended up bottling the wine unfiltered, but it tasted absolutely fine. So that was a career highlight for me.
Wow, that's incredible. That's amazing. So you've got your own Mags wine?
Somewhere in the south of France. You're doing a Shane here, by the way.
That's an inside joke.
Great. So same question to you, Shane. Career highlights.
I've had many highlights, and I really feel that in many ways I've been lucky. And interesting enough, Mags and I were able to meet each other quite recently for the first time as tutors at WSET School in London. But quite recently, I've only just found out a few days ago, but Mags, I'm about to join you on the Master of Wine program.
Congratulations.
Slightly ahead of me. So my journey in wine has been filled with many highlights, from winning the Vintners Bursary when I read my level 2, winning the Moet and Chandon Prize when I completed my diploma. And the Master of Wine is something that I've always wanted to do, and was slightly inhibited by lack of funding, which I'm sure is something that's going to come up in this discussion this evening. Yeah. So having been encouraged by friends to apply, having some interest, not sure I really wanted to do it, but wanting to do it, and now having received that news that I have been accepted on the program, and then even better news is that an organization with whom I've been doing a lot of work with over the years, and that is Decanter Magazine, are going to quite proudly be my sponsors. So at this moment, it is a real highlight for me. I'm still processing it. I'm reveling in it. I'm scared. And so, Mags, we have lots to talk about when I see you next.
Yes, we do.
So
massive
here we are.
Congratulations
The two of us
to both of you.
Well done. Here.
Yeah, wow.
See you at the other side.
Incredible. Fikeo, how are you going to top that? With your
last round was my round.
No. But you must have had some amazing experience, especially at £67 Mile.
Okay, so speaking of £67 Mile, I've had some really big highlights. I mean, to be honest, not to be a fangirl, but just working under the management of Ronan Sabin is like, in itself is a real honor. And then looking after people like Tim Atkins, and like, you know, they had a party once and there were about 8 of them, and I was the only one looking after them. I was like, oh, don't pour the wrong wine in the wrong glass. And it was perfect. Everything went seamlessly. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, and also when I did my virtual masterclass over the lockdown, the Shadi party, non-Burgundian Shadi party was called. And I had the opportunity to have all of my family tune in and to actually see what I'm doing, because I think everything is a bit like, okay. But for them to see me talk about wine and taste wine and to see other people's comments, it was the big, I think one of the biggest things for me, and so they don't need to panic. And they're here now as well. So hi, everyone.
So moving on to the next question, and Fikeo, I'm going to stick with you just because. Has your race or ethnicity ever been a bit of an obstacle for you? So it's getting a bit meaty now. We're not talking about the good stuff, or maybe we are.
Just gonna have a little.
Yeah, that's much needed. Just gonna.
Okay.
Just put the question down.
Take it back a little bit. So when I first started, remember I said I was living in Sheffield, right? I was traveling to London, 40 quid each way, right, for interviews and trials. Some of the times I was able to do both in the same day and etc. But I found that I wasn't getting anywhere. I had about 3, 4, 5 interviews, nothing. And I thought for a second, like, oh, is it got to do with my hair? Because I had braids. And the minute I changed to the weave on, I got the first job. And to be honest, I swear, I got the interview process wasn't even that rigorous. It was just, I was bamboozled, honestly. I was like, I'll take it. But I'm watching you. And another incident happened again, still with the hair. I asked for permission to have braids, right? And I was told that they would have to speak to the higher boss, to get permission for me to do that. And for me, it's ridiculous. So that's one of the many things. And just because I work on the floor, I'm working directly with the consumers and guests and members and things like that. And you just get so many people like, oh, so can I see the sommelier? I'm like, I'm wearing the sommelier outfit. I got my grapes. Like, look at that. And they're like, oh, but
Great.
the real sommelier, the real sommelier. I'm like, that's
Oh my
me.
gosh.
Yeah, just, I can talk about it now because it sounds a bit sad, but it happens quite frequently. And to be honest, I just put myself above the situation most of the time. And where I have the opportunity to educate that person, then I will. Because there's no point getting upset. I'm going to ruin my whole shift. If that happens at the beginning, I'm pretty much like, I'm going to take that to the next table and the next table. And it's not really worth it for me. So you can prove that in your knowledge. It's actually, it lights a fire under your ASS. To sort of make sure that you've got everything bang on, you're studying, you're getting your knowledge right. And if anyone comes at you, you're ready to take them down, basically. Yeah. So it's had its pros and cons. And I feel like a lot of people need to, if you are, you know, in the BAME sort of group, then you need to prioritize where you want to be. You need to think of the place that you are, where you want to be, are you gaining more from that company, or is it bringing you down much more? So you need to kind of wait, because you still need to progress. So you're not gonna. It doesn't make much sense to get upset every single time if you can't tackle it. And I have in several occasions. Luckily for me, you know, where I am right now, they have my back, you know, and I really appreciate that for whatever I put forward. So it's a tricky one too, because so long as your company has your back, it doesn't really not that it doesn't really matter, but that's the priority, that they have your back as opposed to your guest or your customers, I think. So yeah. That's
Wow,
it, pretty much.
what an answer. Mags, I'm going to pose the same question to you.
Yeah, Fikayo went in deep there. I'm like still.
Yeah.
And Fikayo, if there's any consolation, I also have natural hair as a man. And even within our culture, there are connotations relating to that.
Yeah.
So I have twists in my hair, but I can say, sorry, Mags, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but
No,
it's
please,
okay.
It gives me time.
Okay. I give you time, but it's okay. You know, to move with confidence. Your hair is just your hair. Your intelligence, your professionalism is what's going to drive you through and take you to where you need to be. And I can say that as someone with a considerable more experience, having started off looking like Mags, you know, that short haircut, and then suddenly decided that I wanted to experiment with my hair, and here I am. And I can tell you, I'm just fine, and you'll be just fine.
You said, "Here I am." Was that like?
I see what you did there.
But Shane, whilst we're with you, besides your talking about your
sorry,
hair,
I cut Mags off. I feel terrible cutting Mags off.
Has your race or ethnicity ever been an obstacle in your wine career?
Not at all. In fact, I've had the most amazing journey in the wine industry. From the moment I started, I entered with enthusiasm for the subject, having been a wine drinker many years before. Entering the industry was a very considered choice, and I entered with the determination to succeed and to be the best that I can be. And where I've ended up at this stage in my career has been through hard work, but most importantly, it's been through what I've accomplished has been through the love of the subject that I have. And being in the wine industry is an opportunity to meet other people, to share what knowledge I have, to create memories. And despite changing my hair, despite looking different in education, I think it's important to show that you have a command of the subject. So even for Fikayo, you walk in and you show, even if that there is some doubt, just from the exterior, you must always, with grace, with poise, and with confidence, deliver. And I think you must always deliver beyond what you would normally deliver, not just because you want to impress the other people, because you know it is within you, it is you. For me, wine is in my blood. It runs through me. And anybody who comes to a class or an event that I'm a part of, wine is written all over my face. It's written in my hair. It's written in my eyes. I am wine. And sake.
What a statement. I am wine. Mag, are you feeling like wine right now?
Oh, I've got some delicious wine in my glass. Thank you, Night Timber.
Has your race to ethnicity ever been an obstacle in your career, do you think, Mags?
It is splendid. Listen, I think it's kind of a combination of both. I don't know. I think I sit somewhere between I share similarities with Fikayo's story and the same time with Shane's story, because I've always wanted to be the best that I can be. And I don't know if that's because I felt I had a chip on my shoulder or a point to prove, or it was that, I just wanted to push myself as far as I physically could. I don't know yet. But certainly one of the experiences which I had was I sold kind of high-end Italian wines into Mayfair, which is a very, very competitive block of London on trade. And I couldn't get a meeting. It was really tough to break in. And I think when you try and don't succeed, it's very tempting to fall back on well, maybe it's because I look this way, or maybe it's because I am this way. I think when it comes to who I am being an obstacle in the industry, I don't think overtly so. I don't think anyone in the 21st century will come to you and say, we're not giving you this job, or we're not giving you this opportunity because you're a black man or because you're a black woman. I think that's not the case. I think it might be the opposite, in that it might be more kind of covert, more underground, like walking into a tasting, for example, right? I've walked into countless tastings where I kind of look around and it's just, there's no one who looks like me. There's no one who sounds like me, and there's no one who talks like me. So I kind of go in commando style, taste, get out, because I don't feel comfortable in that environment. I don't feel comfortable in that setting. But I have had wonderful experiences in the wine industry, from companies supporting my education. I've had people taking me on board. My very first wine job in the industry, like I mentioned, I didn't, kind of go to university. So it took someone taking a shot in me and saying, listen, okay, you might not necessarily have the education in quotes, but I believe in your ability and I believe in your raw potential to be able to go out and do this. So I'll take you under my wing. And this person was a white gentleman. So I can't sit here and say, it's, being a black person has not, has hindered me. It's kind of a healthy mix of both. You certainly know as people of color, when you walk into a room and you don't feel welcome. Listen, no, we're not kids. You know it, you feel it, it's in the atmosphere. At the same time, when you walk into a room and it doesn't even occur to you that your people are different. You just kind of vibe and you jive. And I've had both experiences. That's the best way I can summarize it.
Awesome. It sounds great. It sounds like you've learned a lot from the experiences you've been through. Louis, what about yourself? You're quite new to the wine industry. Do you feel like your race or ethnicity has been an obstacle? And you've joined the industry at a time where race and ethnicity is on people's agenda at the moment as well.
I mean, so I've been in the industry for about, I say, a year and a half now. And before I worked in the fashion and charity sector. So there's a lot of problems there with diversity and discrimination. But one thing I will say, sadly, I have found that the wine industry is really behind and needs to do a lot of catching up in terms of awareness and diversity. I definitely think when I go to tastings, my ethnicity, so like where you're from, you're exotic, or my hair. I've had a few people stick their fingers in my hair, which, you know what, I didn't think was still a thing they were doing. So yeah, I have found it really, really difficult, if I'm going to be honest. And I do find, especially with being a black woman, that there's so many issues that black women come up across in the industry, not being taken seriously, being over sexualized, or being the race being the top discussion. So I do find when I'm trying to involve myself in conversations with, other tasters or sommeliers or influencers, that my race always comes up in there and it seems to be a hot topic. So that's something I found quite disappointing with the industry, I have to say. But there's also been a lot of amazing people also a lot of people that have taken me under their wing, and have been really great in kind of helping me, you know, divert that and learn how to deal with that, because it's not something that I have been used to so blatantly for a while. And someone, AD from Smith Sits, he's one of the free drinkers, and he's been amazing at, you know, really building my confidence and being like, you don't have to be quiet. You know, if someone touches your hair, say something. You know, this is not okay. So yeah, there's been pros and cons, but I definitely think it's a battle that we need to keep talking about and not excusing the behaviour. You know, it might be coming out of niceness, or, you know, you're really pretty, or your hair's really lovely, but it's also like educating people, like, this is not okay to be doing this. 2020,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I've got the "you're so exotic" term said to me too many times in my life and career, and it's awful. What you know, I was born and raised in London. What makes me exotic?
Yeah.
So I'm just.
Do I look like a pineapple?
Exactly.
Do I look like a passion fruit? I don't think so. No.
So I'm going to move into the last question, because time is flying with you guys. I'm having so much fun. And it's a question that actually since we started The Colour of Wine, I've seen a lot of talk around it and a lot of companies putting things forward. But how do we support the next generation of Black, Asian, minority ethnic groups, people coming into the wine industry who don't see themselves in the industry but like the industry? Who are you 10, 15, 25, 2 years ago? How do we support them? And Mags, I'm going to go to you first. Sorry, are you Max?
Okay, yeah, that's something which no, I'm good. It is something which I hold quite dear to my heart, because from the last question I mentioned that my mic is on. Yeah, I mentioned that, you know, walking into tastings and kind of just having that air of kind of a little bit uncomfortable. I would like to create a more comfortable version or comfortable environment for a younger version of myself to walk into that hall and have the confidence of being able to chat with people and feel a little bit more kind of, you know, arms around you kind of thing. So I think it's a combination of many things. One, finance is a huge thing. Wine education and wine knowledge is not cheap, as Shane kind of, you know, alluded to. We did a cost summary. Everything, if you were to start doing your level 1 all the way up to your diploma, that's not considering the extra samples or considering the kind of travel cost or cost of your time. It costs northwards of £10,000. That's just a pure course cost, and probably your samples to get. We're not covering everything else. So you're looking at about 10 grand to get from kind of I know nothing about wine to I've got the WST diploma. And more often than not, people from a BAME background are not in the upper echelons of wealth. You know, they're kind of middle class, you know, might be kind of working class. And so nobody has 10 grand to throw at, you know, a career that isn't taken seriously, to be perfectly honest. You know, I wasn't taken seriously as a, you know, someone who had a job for a very long time amongst my family. It was just like, yeah, he's the wine guy. You know, it's the family disappointment, let's put it that way. Okay, so yeah, I think the finances are a huge thing. And I think also mentorship, like seeing people that look like you, seeing people that sound like you and that come from the same background as you. For example, myself, I drank cider till I was about 19 years old. And so when someone comes to me and say, I don't drink wine, I say it's a totally learnable skill. You know, we're not trying to cure, you know, incurable diseases. You can totally learn it. What I wish is I had a version in quote of myself to be able to coach me through my education and guide me through my education and point out the pit stops and say, right, this is when you get to this kind of place, here are the challenges you're going to face, and this is how I did it, and this is what I think might be helpful to you. So I think a combination of kind of finding sources of financial support towards that education, and secondly, mentorship. They go hand in hand. Finally, it has to be work experience. We work in a very it's a very competitive market, and it's an industry where we are in quotes kind of fringe. So we don't have the money to compete. We don't kind of drink the same juices as they do, and we're kind of outsiders. So to be able to get people of color or BAME or whatever you want to call it, get them placements, work actual go out and work, do a day in the life of a salesperson. And you know what? You might actually find out that you don't like it. That's so much more valuable to me than, us putting people through WSET. And then when they get a job and they're like, actually, I don't like it. Well, then you've wasted £3,000, £4,000, £5,000 to find out that you don't like it. So why don't we get you out there, do a vintage, help work in an office, do logistics, do finance, whatever it might be. Do that for 3 to 6 months, come back out. And if you like it, great. If you don't, then you know that you don't like it, but you've had that experience. So I think when you put those 3 things together, that's the kind of the next step forward.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Louis, what about yourself? What do you think we should be doing to support the next generation?
I mean, in terms of, I guess, from my side, the communication side of things, I think it would be amazing to see more diverse imagery, and for brands really taking a responsibility for how they're seen. So, if you have a press trip, let's make sure there's a diverse group of journalists or influencers or sommeliers. And if you're doing a photo shoot, let's make sure there's a diverse amount of people there as well, because young BAME people really need to be able to see wine as a viable career option. And we often don't, because it's not something we grow up with. I'm Caribbean, there's an Indian, there's no wine there. We're like, we don't drink wine. So it needs to be something that's like a viable option. And then the last thing I would say is, I know that there's a lot of BAME people within the hospitality industry, and that's great. But what I would like to see is directors, CEOs, and people with real positions of power in those companies as well. That being diverse as well, trustees, things like that. Those places is where we really need diversity. And I think it's great when companies, offer free scholarships and things like that. But let's look at the company culture and figure out why there's no people of color in those positions of power.
Yeah, I agree.
May I just jump in there, Mandy?
Go, it's a panel. Jump in as you like.
Yeah, okay. I think I think it might be the night but talking at this point, but yes. I think I totally hear what you're saying, Louis, and I think we might need to, amongst the BAME community, empower ourselves rather than waiting to be empowered.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
For a long time, we're kind of, yes, if there's help there and you need the help, do take advantage of it. But if you're an expert in communications, for example, education like Shane, sales like myself, don't wait for an opportunity to kind of present itself to you. Go out and create that opportunity for yourself. For example, post lockdown, I've been working in the industry for about just over 10 years, and lockdown gave us a wonderful opportunity. As horrible as it was an opportunity to reflect, to look inwards and kind of give yourself a life MOT. Like, where am I? What have I achieved? Where do I want to see myself in the next kind of 5 years or so? And I made the decision that I was going to start my own wine company. I had no idea how I was going to do it, but it was just a case of, right, okay, I think I have the expertise. I think I have the contacts in the industry. Let's give this a go. Okay, worst case scenario, it doesn't work out. I still have I still know about wine. I still have the contacts. I can go back and sell wine. But I think we have to kind of create those opportunities for ourselves. If you're looking around a room and there's no Black CEO around, well, you be a Black CEO. Nothing stops you from doing that. Okay, so I think we need to get into that culture of like empowering ourselves, empowering one another as well.
If I may just quickly jump in. I think empowerment, and being self-motivated is very important. But being BAME, we need to also be aware of mental health, because it's actually important to keep things moving. You need to check yourself and make sure that you're all good. And also, the whole world of wine is evolving very rapidly. Whether it's the way winemakers are, approaching the grapes because they just feel like it, or because of global warming, wine is changing and winemaking is changing, and we should be changing. The people who are telling the stories of winemakers and regions and these things, we should be evolving as well. So authenticity and individuality is so important in our industry. And social media is another thing, like it's taking off so well. If you have creative backgrounds and then you decide to go into wine, utilize your creative background to boost your wine future, if you will. So that's all I have to say about that.
Mhm.
That's great. Shane, any words of wisdom before I move on to the wine pairing?
I don't know if they're words of wisdom, but certainly for me, if we are to create a cadre of wine professionals from minority backgrounds, we really we have to start at the very bottom if we are to climb that mountain, if we are to build a castle. And for me, I view certainly my journey in the wine industry as one that is a vocation. And a vocation is something which doesn't have a very short lifespan. It's one that extends over a very long period of time. And to ensure that we have that representation in the industry over a long period of time, we need to create awareness, as most people have said, that this is a viable vocation, not a career. For me, a career is something where you just make money and you're able to pay your bills and you survive. But a vocation for me is something that you love, it runs through your veins, and then you hand over the baton to the next generation. And I think we need to start really at that pivotal point where sort of at that A-level stage where we're really starting to see that division between those who are going into academics and those who are going more towards that vocational side of their professional life. So we need to promote this as an option. And I think there are many ways that we can do this. And one of them is showing them that there are other people that look like them, sound like them, and have been not only, existing in the industry, but have been successful. So creating that awareness leads to the next stage. And the next stage is getting the support such that they can then have a successful career. And that is only through education. That education can come in many forms. It can come through that self-determination where you will make it happen for yourself. And in certain situations, as Mags has said, where it might be difficult from your own background to source that finance. So we will have opportunities, not only from big brands. The opportunities need to come also from smaller brands and from those brands that are representative of you and your community. So we shouldn't rely on the big boys only.
Yeah.
So if we have those producers who are from minority backgrounds, I think part of their contribution to the industry is to ensure that they absorb those who have shown that they have an interest in the industry. And then we have the sustainable phase, which goes back to what Fikayo says, where people will experience many difficulties in their personal lives, whether it's mental health, etc. And that's where the mentoring comes in. And once we have those layers, I honestly feel that the only end result will be success. And I'm an optimistic person, as you can see here, but I'm also a person that believes in being logical in the approach. So we start at the base, which is awareness. Secondly, we build on that foundation. We're building the walls with education, and then we have the support. And that's all that I have to add to that.
Cool. Amazing. Guys, I can chat to you for the next 2 hours. I think the audience will probably drop off. But time is really precious. So I'm going to move into the wine pairings. Louis, I'm going to start with you. What would you pair the Nyetimber Demi-Sec Cuvée Cherie with?
Okay, so I had lots of ideas for this, but I went with 2 different cultures. So I would probably pair it with my favorite Caribbean dish, which is called escovitch fish. And so it's like a fried fish, which would go really well with kind of the bubbles, and you've got that acidity to cut through the fattiness. And then there's a slightly spicy, slightly sweet sauce, which I think would work really well with this. And then I also wanted to pair it with a Jewish dish, which are called latkes, which can kind of work as like the carb to the saucy dish. And they are grated onions and potato, and they're fried and they're super oily, and they're delicious. And then the last thing I did think, oh no, I should pair it with an Indian dish as well. So if I was going to pair it with an Indian dish, I would do butter chicken.
Yeah, this is a great meal.
Yeah, I thought maybe butter chicken. It's slightly spicy, slightly sweet, and just delicious. And now I just really want butter chicken. So there you go.
Yeah.
Christmas dinner at Louis.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Louis,
Yeah.
at Louis.
I'm going to start a Colour of Wine supper club when COVID's over, and everyone's just going to cook for me. Shane, what about yourself? What would you be pairing it with?
Okay, so by way of background, I'm from the British Overseas Territory of the Turks and Caicos Islands, and many people may not know where it is, but it is at the southeastern end of the Bahamas and just north of Haiti and Dominican Republic. And so there's an abundance of seafood there. And I decided that I would, and I actually tried it today, I would have it with something called conch salad. Now, conch is a mollusk, which is a little bit similar perhaps to whelks, or one can say scallops. Of course, it's very difficult to source conch here in the UK, which is fresh. So the dish is called conch salad, which is sort of a style in between aguachile from Mexico and ceviche from South America. So it involves the use of the raw meat from the conch. So the very pretty pearl pink conch shell, there's a meat which we refer to as conch. And here you would create a very fresh salad with lots of lime juice. And anybody who knows anything about that part of the world knows that limes are the lemons of the Caribbean. And here they would all be diced up, the conch meat, with spring onions or onion, depending on your preference, including the likes of a little bit of Scotch bonnet pepper, not a lot, some sweet peppers, and some fresh tomatoes. So it is a very vibrant, fresh, clean dish. And the wine is really, really fantastic with its acidity, which will counterbalance the use of the lime juice. The tiny bit of sweetness. In fact, here, before I tasted this wine, I was expecting something much sweeter, but it's off dry at best. And I have to say, well done to the team at Night Timber for creating something which is just absolutely so well balanced. So that balancing factor between the chili and that tiny, tiny, really tiny amount of sugar, and overall the intensity of the dish being very fresh and clean and light, balancing with this fabulous, elegant expression of an English sparkling wine.
That sounds incredible. Kayo, what about you?
So I did some hard, thinking about this. I'm Nigerian, born and raised, and I moved here when I was about 16. So I've actually lived majority of my life in Nigeria. We have okra soup. So okra is like, I think the Indians, they use that as well for a lot of their dishes, but it's almost like a succulent, like aloe vera. So it's got that gooey bit of inside. And I thought, is the carbon dioxide going to break down this bond? Probably not, but we're going to try it anyway. So my mom makes the seafood okra. She's here. She puts lobsters in there, periwinkle.
Ooh.
Yeah, a bit of lobster, a bit of periwinkle. They're kind of meaty like clams, but they're sweet as well. So you got that in there, and you just got like king prawns and things like that. And then you have a little bit of stew, which is based with tomatoes, Scotch bonnet, onions, garlic. It doesn't occupy most of the dish, but I feel like texturally. So yesterday I ordered some, right? And I tried it with my Night Timber. And it didn't break down the gooiness, which I personally really enjoy. It did a little bit, but not too much. Not too much to take away from the actual reason why you're eating okra in the first place. But they complemented it really well. It was super spicy. The slight sweetness and the Night Timber cuvee sherry complemented that beautifully. I didn't have to, breathe too much because I didn't have to like, because it was.
Yeah, you're breathing just fine. I just want to the audience. Yeah.
And then I had that with pounded yam as well. So
that sounds incredible.
Yeah, so the pounded yam can be a bit much. So the acidity not being super high with the cuvee sherry cut right through the pounded yam, complemented the okra, pacify the Scotch bonnet. It was beautiful. So that is going to be my pairing today.
Amazing. Okay, I'm definitely coming around to try this. I'll bring the Night Timber, you cook. Mags, what about you? What would you be pairing this with?
Max is
These
speechless.
guys, like, they're having like, I need to eat. I need to eat at each and every one of your places. I'm gonna start like a food tour, like a road show, starting at Shane's and working my way around. Yeah. So I was born in Cameroon, which is right next door to Nigeria, and we share a lot of dishes. So when Fikayo was talking about the okra soup and pounded yam, I was just sitting here going, "Yes, go on." I would go for something which is a little bit more kind of relaxed, which is also served in Nigeria. It's fried plantains. It's kind of, you get plantains in the Caribbean, you get plantains in anywhere that's kind of subtropical. The reason why I picked plantains was once upon a time I used to work at Waitrose, and a lady came into Waitrose and said, "I'm looking for plantains," and nobody in the whole building knew what plantains were. I was like, where have I moved to? At this point, I've been living in the UK for about 5 years. And I'm like, these guys don't know what plantains, like, who are you, right? So for those who don't know, plantains are like giant bananas. That's the best way you can describe it. But you don't eat them raw. You can eat them in several different ways. You can boil them. You can kind of grill them by the fireside. Those who know what fireside is, Google it. But the way I like to have my plantains are fried. So you dice them up. And here is a subject of contention. You can either dice them up, fry them straight, or you can sprinkle a little bit of sea salt on them. Now, that will divide families. You know, that will separate brother from sister. I prefer it with the sea salt because it just brings it's quite sugary when it's ripe. It's like a banana. Okay, so when you fry that, it can be a little bit kind of sticky on the palate. So when you add a little bit of sea salt, it kind of, it reduces that sweetness. And I think that sugar in the dish plus that sea salt will really bring out the Nightingale Cuvée Sherry has got some kind of lovely savoriness about it, which I think as a pair. Plus, I live on my own. I'm a bachelor. I want something that I can cook in the next kind of 5 to 10 minutes. I'm not about to stand in the kitchen for the next 2 hours. Okay. So fried plantains. If you're looking for fried plantains, I'll tell you exactly where to get them. Go to West Brompton, North End Road. Get off tube at West Brompton. It's about 5 minutes walk from North End Road. There's a massive kind of street market. It's like a little Africa. Everything you get in Africa, you can get it there. You can get your okras there. You can get your cassavas, your potatoes, your yams, your plantains. Go there, get some ripe plantains. You only need 1 or 2. Dice them up, little sprinkle of sea salt, fry them in a frying pan, Nightingale Cuvée Sherry. You can thank me later.
Right, I'm coming over to yours. That sounds incredible. Guys, like, when are we doing this supper club? I will come and be chief taster.
Max, I'll have you know, you can come to South London and I'll take you to East Street Market and you can find the same.
Sounds good. I'll be joining all these trips. Yeah. So guys, we're going to move into the question part because we've had some questions from our lovely audience. So thank you. The first question is from Eleanor Watts. Do you think BAME men and women getting into the wine industry have the same experience, or is it even more challenging if you're a certain gender? That's a really interesting question because actually up until today, we've had an all-female panel every week. And then Shane and Mags just throwing out their gender in there, mixing up for us. I'm actually going to ask, well, anyone can chime in, but I'm going to ask Mags because he's been in the industry a while. If Mags, are you there? Yeah. Are you rereading the question?
So do you think men and women getting into the... Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just reread the question. I think listen. Yeah, I don't think. I think as with every job in life, right? It takes experience to get in. I always find it kind of challenging when you come out of university. For those who've been to university and you're trying to get your first uni job, and they're asking you for 2 years of experience. Like you just walked out of university, and they're like, "Oh, you got to have a year's experience." There's a statement which I used when I was quite proud of myself for coming up with it. I said, higher attitude, and not aptitude. You can always learn aptitude. You can always learn skills. Hire the people with the right kind of mindset and the right kind of, behavior. Okay, higher potential. So I think if you're looking for someone who is extremely experienced, yes, you could get experience, but experience doesn't necessarily mean you're getting the right person for the right job. Experience is just experience. You could get someone who's got 1 year experience, who's got 6 months experience in the industry, but they've got that raw hunger. I come at wine I have a kind of business hat on when I'm thinking about wine. Okay, it's a numbers thing. You got to be able to make a profit out of wine. And when I'm trying to hire someone, say a salesperson, I'm looking for someone who has that raw hunger. I'm not looking for someone who's been in the industry for 30, 40, 50 years. That doesn't necessarily translate to numbers on the board. You need someone with the right attitude that's going to walk into the business, walk into buildings with confidence and have conversations with people and feel free to challenge people and to push people in the right way, not necessarily saying, oh, this guy has been around for 30 years and so they're the right person for the job.
Yeah. I do want to add, though, gender diversity is a whole separate issue. I know it twines in with race diversity and diversity in the general, but it's a big one, and especially in this industry, it's an issue that also needs to be addressed. I'm going to just ask one of the girls now to their opinion on it, and then we'll move into the next question about gender diversity and race. Sorry, Louis, do you want to, as a communicator, the female communicator of colour, you don't mind me using that phrase?
I mean, it might make me unpopular to say it, but I do think that women have a harder time in the wine industry. Women statistically have a harder time in most industries with being paid less and in less positions of power. So I think, the wine industry traditionally is very male dominated, white male dominated. And so I do think that women are at a slight disadvantage. And I think there's probably a lot of awareness that needs to be made. I saw a pregnant sommelier actually at a tasting event, which was incredible. She was like 7 months pregnant, and she rocked up to the tasting and all the people were like, why is she here? But I loved it. I was like, yes, you're showing that, women pregnant or not can do wine, and having a family doesn't make that difference. So yeah, I do think women are at a disadvantage, sadly, and I think that's the same with a lot of industries.
Yeah, I actually, my teacher on my WSET3 was pregnant, and I was shocked just to see a pregnant woman drinking wine. She didn't drink any of it, and it was just her knowledge that we needed. But yeah, I'm going to move on to the next question, which should be coming up on our screens shortly. And it says, will these pairings be documented somewhere for us to refer to? So this is me asking you guys to send me recipes, and I'm going to publish a book. No, if you guys are happy to share recipes or just even the dishes, and we can link back to your pages, your Instagram page and things from Bayman Hospitality. And you never know, there might be some kind of supper club dinner in post-pandemic times that we can do.
Certainly.
One last question that's just come through, and then I'll be wrapping things up. It should be on the screen shortly, but I'll read it out. Mags mentioned he can walk into a room and feel very unwelcome, and other times he wouldn't notice he was a minority. What advice would he give to people starting out who feel unwelcomed? Tough question.
Ooh, very tough.
Mags, James.
Mags.
Yeah, it is. Do you mind if I jump in it?
Yeah, it was for you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Question was
okay. I think. You got to know why you got into wine in the first place. Just like any other career, you got to know why you started doing it in the first place. You're always going to face challenges in whatever vocation it is you kind of embark on. Okay, so you might have, if I'm quite into my sports, and I read a couple of kind of sports documentaries, or watch a few sports documentaries, or read some sports autobiography, and you get some sportsmen that we know of today, and they talk about when they were back at school, they would have had a teacher who said, or you're never going to be that, or you're never going to achieve this, or you're never going to. So if you responded negatively, back to what Fikayo said right at the start, if you responded negatively to every time you faced, a challenge, you're not going to go very far. You got to have your own target and your own goal, and go at it at your pace. It's not you versus the world, it's you versus you. Okay, so set that challenge, and it doesn't matter how people make you feel. You know what you're trying to get to. I remember distinctively, I was working in Waitrose, and I was kind of emptying the bale, when you get all your cardboard stuff. And I just finished my level 2. And I said to one of the managers, I'm going to do the MW one day. And he literally laughed. And now I could have taken that and gone back home and felt like, oh, I can never actually do this. I can never actually achieve that. But actually, like, that actually lit up a fire in me. Like, okay, if you think that I can't do it, I'm going to show you I can do it. And that's the approach. That's the mentality you got to take to it. Because otherwise, you know, the people who can't do it will try and discourage you from doing it. So you both can be in the same boat. If someone is trying to discourage you or make you feel unwelcome, well, they want to push you out. So how are you going to respond to that? Are you going to give in, or are you going to stand tall? It's entirely up to you.
That lovely note to end on. That was very inspiring, Mags. So we've done our hour, and guys, it's been an absolute privilege to talk
Too
to you.
short.
Way too short. I could have spoken to you about this topic for hours. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to tonight and for the first 2 episodes of the series. I've had a fabulous time. Thanks to Bayman Hospitality for letting me be the host. It's been incredible. A big shout out to our event partners, the Wine and Spirits Education Trust and Night Timber. It's been a pleasure to host this series. We've had some really difficult conversations. We've had some really great conversations. And during this time, we've also seen changes in the industry within the 4 weeks that we've done this. So to me, things are changing and moving in the right direction. We have more events coming up that our Bayman Hospitality events calendar will be putting on their Instagram page. So please follow us at Bayman Hospitality. We have 2 online events coming up in October to celebrate Black History Month. And I'm really excited. I know a few details about them, but I don't know it all, but it looks like it should be fun. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please share this link with your friends who've missed out, and family and partners, and anyone just wants to see my smiling face for 3 hours in total. Have a lovely evening, and speak to you or catch up with you all soon. Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye, guys.